Hello, everybody. How are you? Has this been like the longest day of your life? What a day. I'll be honest with you. I'm probably going to keep the stream semi-short. Besides the fact that I'm drained, like I think a lot of people are. I got a kiddo in the other room, finally got her down for bed. And I just wanted to check in with you all because we've been talking about media coverage and Trump and the election and speech online. And it just feels like all of these things have intersected today. And I'll be the first one to just flat out say, I am not an expert in a lot of the stuff that people are talking about right now. And so I want to be really careful about opining on things that, you know, I'm just a former TV news reporter, and I worked for corporate news for 12 years, and I was a local news reporter, and for a year back in my early 20s, I was a national news producer. And so I've been watching the trend in the media. I know what happens behind the scenes. I've seen what changed in the last few years. And I've just been kind of trying to make sense of all of this myself. What happened today, I've seen lots of commentary, before today about sort of the differences in looking at this presidency and media coverage. Of course, there are some people who have argued in the field that, the Trump presidency deserved to have, really dogged, intense journalism because he was a unique case. There are other journalists who have argued that Trump was a continuation, not an aberration. And really, I kind of think the way people look at media coverage of all of this, it probably does fall between those two sides. You see a continuation or a symptom, or you see something entirely unique. And depending on how you look at where we're at right now, whether you see a movement, which is why when frankly, of course, I'll just to be, fully open about how I look at this as somebody who has been, talking to people, just interviewing folks over the years about things and really just trying to understand where people are at. I tend to fall on the side of, this has been something that has been mounting and boiling up for a long time. I think the distrust of institutions has been boiling up for a long time. Somebody said to me on my page once that I'm just a millennial who distrusts institutions, and it's just because I'm a millennial. But I think there are a lot of older people who aren't millennials that have grown increasingly distrustful of our institutions. That includes the federal and state governments, really the government, I'll just leave it at that. The media, the justice system, and on both sides, right? Because what we saw, for instance, with the Chaz Chop in the Seattle area over the summer, to me was kind of, I don't know if people would necessarily say these are of the same ilk, but if you look at it without the ideology and you just say, we're seeing a movement of people on different sides, basically kind of like throwing over the tables, the money changer tables, I guess, if we were to use the biblical analogy, and have decidedly become very distrustful that their causes are going to be worked out within the institutions. And so they're kind of taking history into their own hands. And I think we're seeing this in a lot of different ways. And I think we have started to see this, it's not new when it comes to journalism, but and the media. But, I'll show you something which I think is really interesting. I'm going to get to your messages in just a quick second, but I just want to show you this video I saw that I think it was tweeted by an NBC reporter, so stand by for me for a second, okay? Here we go. And I'm gonna just cut over to the web here. Okay, so just press watch again. I'm gonna turn the volume off here, but you can see this is people stomping on what I believe, well, I don't know whose camera gear it belongs to. It looks like the cameras that we used to use, so a really big camera. So it must belong to a mainstream TV news station. That would be my guess, because usually independent journalists don't carry a camera like that. You see a box here, carrying case AP all over it. Maybe that camera belonged to the AP. I don't know. But usually that's what a TV news crew carries, is a camera that size. And you just see people just stomping on the gear, throwing water on the box, the outlet box that usually the sound goes into that. And they hook up other wires to it. And it was hard to understand what people were saying, but look at this tripod and camera. These cameras let me just tell you, these cameras are worth a lot of money. I had a photographer buddy who accidentally dropped one off of the side of a bridge. And, hang on a second. Let me put this back up. Okay. Yeah, it says, breaking: mob of Trump supporters swarm the media near the U.S. Capitol. They yell what Trump frequently says: the media is the enemy of the people. They destroy equipment and chased out reporters. I've never seen anything like this in my 20-year career. And this is Shamari Stone, NBC DC reporter. And it's like, on one hand, it's to me, it's never not surprising to look at something like that. But on the other hand, it's also not really surprising because, well, first off, years ago, we dealt with protests in the Seattle area that I've talked about on this channel, where cameras like that were ripped out of our photographers' hands. I had a buddy whose, his thumb was dislocated. People coming up and telling us that we were, really, they may not have used the word enemy of the people. That I don't know if that's copyrighted by Trump, but they basically called us that. And this was pre-Trump. This idea of distrust of the institutions is not new. And when it comes to media, which is what I used to do, we saw this years ago, and I think this has just been growing. And, maybe you're somebody who feels like Trump has rightly talked about it. Maybe you're somebody who feels like he's been too hard on journalists. Maybe you're somebody who feels like he's used it to his political advantage, and it's just he loves being in the media, and he doesn't really hate the media. He actually loves it because he gets so much free press. Whatever you are, in whatever category you fall into, I guess for the journalists out there, I've said this before. I said this, gosh, I did a video about Trump and the partisanship of the media now, and sort of the negative coverage of his presidency over the last 4 years, and how different it was compared to other presidencies as far as media coverage is concerned, and just how partisan the divide has become for like how people consume news. Like, I think the numbers were really like 90% of people who read the New York Times, for instance, is affiliated as a Democrat. And then Fox News Channel is very similar in majoritarian conservative. And I remember saying in that video that at some point, there's going to be a point where we really need people to listen to something that we're saying in the news. And we're going to have gotten to the point where we're over the cliff, and it's just no one's going to be paying attention anymore. And we need to take a hard look at ourselves and ask how we contributed to this situation. And that's not to let off, Trump in his speech today, or anybody else really. I'm not trying to put all the blame on my old industry. I'm just saying that what I have witnessed over the years and I've talked about all the differences of whether it's the amount of time journalists have to do their stories, how ratings play into it, how the age of how young journalists are now that are being hired, just the speed at which news is produced, all of this stuff plays into it. And so, it's not even to just say that it's all purposeful and nefarious where we're at, just to say that there are so many different factors that have brought us to this point that I really feel like this is a time of deep reflection, at least for me. And I don't know about for the rest of you all, but it's definitely something that as I was watching and thinking, like, as seeing that video, for instance, of people just stomping on news cameras, knowing how often I used to use cameras like that, being in situations like this, and I figured I'd just talk to you all about, do you have any questions? Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share? Just to kind of give everybody an opportunity, if there's something you're interested in knowing more about from behind the scenes, about how this stuff works, as somebody who has been, frankly, in situations where people have occupied a building. I've been in occupied banks. I've been in situations where, people have refused to leave. I got to say, I watched the video of the woman who was shot today. It's so disturbing and so excruciating and just so sad. It's hard in a lot of ways. Like I said, I was talking to this constitutional attorney this morning because we were working on a video about Assange. So stay tuned for that, because I've been trying to get something out about Assange and the Assange ruling, and all of this stuff is kind of pressed forward. And so hopefully he and I will have a discussion tomorrow, and then I'll get that up. Maybe he'll do a live stream, not totally sure. But he and I both kind of agreed that, there's the surface level of what's happening, what you saw today. And then there's what's happening underneath. And I know there are going to be people who have different opinions about what that is. What I see is a very serious distrust in I guess the only real word I can say is institutions, a really severe distrust in people who are in charge and who have been the bearers of, truth and justice in the American way. And I don't know exactly how this ends. We've talked about this before. Somebody asked me on one of my last live streams about a civil war. What do I think? I know a lot of people are talking about that. I don't know what happens here. I will say, like, I posted on my community page last night about somebody commenting that my MSNBC video that, we're not obsessed with Trump, we're obsessed with saving this country. And my response was, what's the plan when he's gone? And, and some people have said, like, well, see, now, now look at the problem, and, you're a grifter and whatever. And no, I don't believe MSNBC was trying to save the country. I believe the statistics show that for itself. The amount of free advertising, the amount of coverage, I really believe that and I pulled up some links that we could look at. Just the New York Times quoted $2 billion worth of free media, around the 2016 election. And so it's hard for me, like, on one hand, to see my old field talk about just how shocked and surprised and I'll be honest with you, like, I did not expect this to happen. But to hear that, like, that the phenomenon of just of outrage and distrust and it's funny, even this constitutional attorney was telling me today as we were talking, like, he was saying how he didn't even know this, like, he was trying to watch the speech, and it was only, at the time, he said he could only watch it on Fox News Channel, that MSNBC and CNN, I don't know, because I wasn't watching television, but he said a lot of the other stations weren't even covering it. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, people are storming the Capitol. And is that part of the problem, that it's like, well, we're just not going to talk about this guy anymore. We went from obsessing over him for a long period of time. We made a ton of money off of this. We put him front and center constantly. And then we're just like, okay, we're done with this guy. Maybe now he's dangerous. And then people storm the Capitol, and it's like, oh, this is, how did this happen? And so, like, I'm kind of sitting here just trying to say, all right, well, how did this really happen? So, and I don't, like I said, I'm not trying to pretend like I'm an expert on all of this or anything. I do have a background in this field, so that's why I figured, let's talk. So, let me go back to the chat and check out what people are talking about here, and I'll just take some of your questions if you have any questions. Just, let's see, give me a second here. I'm just gonna look through what people are talking about. All right, give me a second, guys. I'm just scrolling. There's a lot here, so okay. Oh, goodness. I'm trying to figure out like what's a good, where's a good place to start? There's so many. So, okay. Let's just start here. We'll just start kind of in the middle. All right. Instead, an American woman was shot and killed by forces unknown, but that does not matter at all. Okay, I don't know what the instead is about, but they're saying it's Capitol Police. At this point, I don't know if that's confirmed. So I don't know, but I watched the video. I honestly, I kind of wish I hadn't. It's so disturbing. And, I want to say one thing. Like, I've said this in prior videos. I've been to events where people were shot. And I try to get across to people that, on one hand, I absolutely support the right to peaceably assemble and whatnot, and to protest and all that stuff. On the other hand, I don't think a lot of people understand how quickly events like this can turn. And I have a feeling this woman probably did not think that this was how today was going to end. Otherwise, she probably wouldn't have been there. I just hope it's kind of a PSA to people. Just be aware that when you go to an event where there's a ton of people, and maybe even not a ton of people, but there's 15 people who are really upset about something, that folks start acting in ways that they wouldn't act normally. And like I said, I don't know I don't know if it's been confirmed who's responsible for this, but we're heading into what I believe to be a very, very tense time. It already is. What am I saying? It's already tense. It's already tense. So if you're going to go out and exercise whatever, freedom you feel the need to, like freedom of speech, to talk about whatever it is, whether you're on the Black Lives Matter side of the aisle or you're on the Trump, election side of the aisle, whatever it is. I've been to many, many, many of these, and it is not predictable all the time or ever when they can turn to become something where you will not have time to get out. And I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just trying to be real with you all. It's not something that many people necessarily have experience with. It's something that I just try to tell people that you see the video and maybe you're just you see these images constantly. It becomes normalized. Like people don't necessarily get, like, they don't have that necessary, I guess, or that sort of innate instinctual caution, because maybe these images are just so normalized for us now. But it's very different when you're actually there. And so I just feel like saying that simply because I feel like it's something to definitely take to heart. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you, just be aware. The media is a failed state. Gosh, I would like to believe that we're at a point where something will come from reevaluating what is going on. Perhaps, like they say, sometimes maybe you just got to hit rock bottom before things get better. I don't know. I know that where we're at with the way people consume media and the way the media is given, and I hate just saying the media, because there's a whole gamut out there, but there's so much that needs to be addressed, and it's not just from what people see on the outside, from sort of the overtly partisan side of it, or the obsession with one or another topic, or the incendiary way of talking, or the ratings battle, or the money, or the CIA pundits that now just come on as experts, and whatever else. There's so much to the problem of what we're consuming that is also, like I've talked about, time and 24-hour news cycles, and journalists echo chambers themselves, and not necessarily having time to research topics, and not knowing people who are different than they are, and coming from the same schools and the same ideologies, and there's just, I feel like at this point, I guess what I'm thinking a lot about is that we need to start critiquing our own. And I think in part there are channels that are doing really well which do that. And I think there's a real value to that. And instead of constantly pointing fingers at other people, we need to start really looking at ourselves in the mirror, whatever industry we're in, whatever political party we're in, and also to just think about, like, especially, and I guess I don't say this necessarily the average person, but to somebody who's in a position of power in one of these institutions. So I kind of mean those folks more than anybody. It's time to really take a hard look at our role in where we're at right now, and take some responsibility and start, figuring out how we can make things better. Because it's really easy to look at this stuff and say, I just can't believe what I'm seeing here. It's funny. I'm going to scroll down and get a couple more, get some super chats and stuff, but I want to show you something that the former Seattle police chief tweeted. So let's look at this. What a day. Shout out to the Libertarian Party. The Libertarians have the non-aggression principle. I did hear Rand Paul talking about stuff today. I don't know about it. It feels like right now that this is coming down to, like I said, it's coming down to a point where whether it's a political party or it's institutional traditional media, or like, and I do believe that COVID has in part ramped up this distrust because of the hypocrisy of some of the political leaders with the rules of the shutdowns, like, you have to do this, but I'm not going to follow those same rules. And I think people are really concerned right now about government control over businesses and where we're headed with COVID, especially. But we saw last year that people are also very concerned with justice and, police departments and all that. So it's not just like, it doesn't, I don't know if it extends, like, it's just a political party or a particular ideology that is at the point of breaking right now. I think there's just, there's a lot of distrust out there, regardless of how people are looking at it. And to go back to the libertarian side of things, I don't know. I'm, like I said, I try not to weigh in too much on the political party side of things because I'm not a political expert. But I do think, if there is something to be said for what I believe we're seeing is and I don't know if I'm not new to say this, but I think you're seeing a populism obviously boil up right now on both the left and the right. Where is the role of libertarianism when it comes to that? You tell me. But I do think that there's certainly a surge of populism around the world right now. And as if you guys saw the tech lawyer guy, the internet lawyer guy, talking about all of this stuff, he was kind of, criticizing Republicans and conservatives, and said, obviously, the conservatives aren't the same as they used to be years ago. And I was like, well, no, I don't think they are. I think there's definitely a divide within the Republican side of the political world. And there's also a divide within the left. There's a progressive left now that would be, I guess, considered more the populist left. And then there's the sort of mainline establishment Democrat Party. And so again, I think that sort of like that populism is probably part of the distrust in the media. I have talked about what I believe the role of social media is in some of this. I've talked about how I think that when you go from like a priestly class that used to give people information and there was no check on that, alternatively, you weren't going to necessarily be able to go on Twitter or go on Facebook and find alternative views, that maybe we just trusted what the authorities were telling us. But I've mentioned before, like Martin Luther, for instance, and the Protestant Reformation, and how being able to read the Bible in one's own language made such a difference to how people understood religion and then politics and then governance. And it was because people could read for themselves what was going on, and they realized that in a lot of ways they'd been lied to. And that, I believe that same thing is happening right now, and we are at the cusp of a new revolution again, I don't know exactly what that's going to look like a year, 2 years, 5 years from now, but I do believe that alternative media, and that's kind of why I want to talk about journalism and establishment journalism versus what like I'm doing on YouTube right now or people are doing out there, because I think it is ramping this up. It's increasing the energy out there because people are like, well, wait a second, you all told us this, but this person's saying this could be a possibility. Why are they not telling us that? And these are fair questions. But I think all of this has to play. And look, they've suspended, I believe, let's go to it real fast. Hang on a second. I'm going to show you. They've gone to, Twitter, I believe, and Facebook has suspended Trump's accounts. So, yeah, I'm going to show you what they're saying on Twitter here. Okay. As a result of the unprecedented and ongoing violent situation in Washington, D.C., we have required the removal of 3 @real Donald Trump tweets that were posted earlier today for repeated and severe violations of our civic integrity policy. This means that the account of @real Donald Trump will be blocked. They say locked. Oh, maybe they meant locked. Yeah, they probably did. For 12 hours following the removal of these tweets. If the tweets are not removed, the account will remain locked. I believe I saw that he says this tweet is no longer available. Okay, because it violated the Twitter rules. So, let's look at their policy so you can see it for yourself. Civic integrity policy. You may not use Twitter services for the purpose of manipulating or interfering in elections or other civic processes. This includes posting or sharing content that may suppress participation or mislead people about when, where, or how to participate in a civic process. In addition, we may label and reduce the visibility of tweets containing false or misleading information about civic processes in order to provide additional context. So I plan to ask Danny Sheehan, he was the constitutional attorney I was talking to this morning. The reason that I've appreciated his perspective on a lot of this stuff is because he's worked on some pretty big cases. He worked on the Pentagon Papers case. He's got a really interesting perspective on Assange and also this tech stuff. And I think he would have been actually a pretty interesting counter to the internet law guy who was basically, essentially he was pro canceling people that he considered to be disinformation campaigners, which I have talked about repeatedly that, of course, as soon as you have a gatekeeper or you're going to do gatekeeping, then you have to have a gatekeeper and then we have to decide who's going to be the gatekeeper and then where does that take us? And so Danny's interesting because he's a pretty hardline First Amendment guy. He's a constitutional attorney, not a Silicon Valley law tech attorney guy. So he has got a totally different perspective. And so it was interesting talking to him today as this was all happening because literally we were he's in California, I'm here, and we're like listening to it and watching it at the same time on the phone because like I said, we were supposed to be recording a video about Assange. And we both kind of were like, we were talking about the flagging the tweets and the suspending the accounts and then even like the mainstream outlets like not covering Trump's speech. So it's like you're not seeing what's happening in the speech, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, this is happening at the Capitol, so it's breaking news. Let's go to that, and it just makes you wonder what's going on. And like again, like I said, to go back to what I posted last night about like we're not obsessed with Trump, we're obsessed with saving the country. I don't buy that. I don't buy that was at the heart of what we've seen in national cable and network news coverage of this presidency that we were trying. I know some people have said that and feel that way, but I believe that there's been all kinds of other really problematic aspects to what we've seen. And I saw Matt Taibbi write once, I think the title was like, the Trump era was, when it came to media, like the Trump era is crazy and it needs to end. And basically like talking about, I'm botching his title, so you can go look it up. Just Google like Matt Taibbi and the Trump era, crazy news coverage or whatever. I'll try to look it up and see if I can find the exact title. But basically this premise was discussing exactly kind of what we've been talking about for a while, that there's been such a fixation on it. Like, where does that lead us? And like, how does that trickle out into the way that people, whether they are either they're on the I like this hysteria, like I'm scared and I need to go to, you know, mommy or daddy Fox MSNBC and they need to make me feel better, or maybe I'm really scared so they're also really scared so we can be scared together. Like, how does this trickle out into now the way that people are actually believing in what they have to do, like feeling like they're just desperate and they have no other choice but to overthrow the institutions. And again, this, you know, whether you agree or disagree with what we saw over last year, it's very similar in nature and energy. Like, we feel like we don't have any recourse within the institution, so off with the institutions. And that, I believe, is kind of what we saw today too. So, like, where do we go from there? And how do we deal with that? And to take a look real fast, and I will get back to the chats in 1 second, but just take a look at this. So this was Carmen Best. She's the retired police chief. She actually retired out of Seattle Police Department after the Chaz. And in part, it kind of came down to that she felt like her position wasn't, you know, given enough authority to make the decision she felt like she needed to make to, you know, run the police department, I guess. And that maybe there was some tension between her and the mayor about handling the Chaz. I mean, we'd heard that it wasn't her decision to just kind of let multiple blocks of Seattle be taken over. But it's interesting to me to see her say, I cannot believe what I'm seeing, you know, because, like I said, I'll give her some grace that, like, yeah, I mean, I was surprised too. But on the other hand, it's like, you were the police chief when people believed that, you know, they couldn't trust your department or the government. I mean, those people really didn't like the mayor either. I saw tons of graffiti when I was driving around about Mayor Durkin. And so it's like, this may be an escalation on scale, I guess. But as far as it being of a similar nature of just like, we're done with authority, you know, we're done with the justice. We don't believe that the injustice department, the deep state department, you know, all these things that people talk about, like, it's, to me, it was kind of interesting to see this. A friend of mine who's a journalist was like, yeah, but it's different. It's the capital versus, you know, a few blocks of a city. Maybe. I don't see it as that different. I guess I see it like maybe symbolically, maybe. But I see both, these people are very different in ideology. But I see a very similar sort of, I don't know, energy underneath it all. So I'm going to go back to the chats and then we'll wrap up. If you guys need someone to follow, definitely check out Brendan Gutenschwager, who was on the channel not too long ago. He's there. I've been trying to get a hold of him all day to talk about what's going on, but I think he's just really busy. So maybe he'll come on tomorrow. So, all right. Okay, here we go, Carol. Hi, Allison. You give a voice of common reason even in these crazy times. Thank you. Well, thank you for the super chat, and I appreciate it. Oh, you know what? Hang on. Let me put it up here. Can you see it? It says, yeah, Carol. Hi, Allison. So I just read it to you, so I don't need to read it again. But thank you for saying that. I'm going to scroll down and we'll go backwards. See if I missed anything. Here we go. So the camera is worth more than the lives of those who are oppressed. Y'all never listened, just blew us off or tried to placate us. Yeah, I wasn't trying to say the camera's worth more. I was just trying to say that, like, it's just interesting when you're in the business and you know how much that camera is worth, and people are just like, we don't care. We don't care. We don't care about your fancy, expensive cameras. We don't care about your expensive, fancy tripods. We just don't care. And so actually, it wasn't that I told you, like, I had a buddy who dropped his over a bridge once and got suspended for it. And I don't say that because material things matter more than people's lives or more than what we're witnessing in society right now. It's just to say that for me, it's like, and for that reporter specifically, when you're watching that and people just dumping, I mean, I have thought about the French Revolution a lot today because, okay, I was a French and history major. I lived in Paris and I studied a lot of that. But it just, the imagery is to me like, it's fascinating to watch, because it's like, and I talk about this again. The media themselves specifically, which is why I think of the French Revolution, is because, and not maybe it's not a apples to apples comparison in other ways, but when I think about the media specifically and what I saw today and that video that I showed you is kind of the aristocracy of it, is the, like, these expensive things that symbolize the aristocracy and the power and the class of where you guys come from, which, again, be very careful to think that the average journalist is making a lot of money, because they're not. So it's a misnomer to think that they're really actually aristocratic, the average one, in the sense that they're like making a ton of money in their high society. But I mean it from the sense of control and power and influence. And so watching that, I think it was just like that, those cameras, they symbolize that influence, that perceived aristocracy, and people are just like, we're done. So that's what I saw there. Lynn says Trump's account won't be unlocked until 12 hours after he deletes those tweets, and if he doesn't, it will be indefinite. Yeah, it's interesting. Curious what you guys think about. I've been very clear about what I think about flagging, and I call it censorship. I know some people don't call it censorship. Like that lawyer didn't call it censorship. He called it editorial management or something like that. But I want to know what's going on, and I want to know what the guy's saying. So you guys know what I think about it, but I'm curious what you think, because maybe there are other people who have a different opinion. But it's historic. That's to say the very least. It's definitely a historic time to have the president of the United States blocked on social media, but not the first time for him, of course. But all right. Okay. Ken says, what do you think the effects of today are, and how long will it last? I don't know. I don't know how long. Okay, let me go to the second part first. How long will it last? My guess is that this situation itself gets cleared up at some point in the near future. I mean, maybe a few days, a week, or something like that. As far as what is the undercurrent of it all, I don't think that goes away anytime soon. I think that stuff just grows, which is again why I said that. Like when I said, what's the plan to save the country once Trump is gone? What I meant was, like, all this stuff is still going to be here. And it's going to be something that people are going to have to reckon with for a long time, I believe. At least one guy in the Capitol was also in Arizona participating with Antifa. Were Antifa infiltrators at the head of storming the Capitol, or are they FBI? I will say there is a lot of chatter right now online about who exactly was in this group. Was it all Trump supporters? Were there other people that were there to use this as an opportunity to, stand in Mitch McConnell's desk with a Fox hat or whatever, and who are these people? But there definitely were Trump supporters there. Obviously, that the woman who was shot and killed, at least if her social media accounts are true to what people are saying, I mean, she was definitely a Trump supporter, and she was there believing that the election was stolen, and she was storming the Capitol with people and in protest of that, and I even saw, I think, a Trump flag around her. So I don't think that was, that she was FBI. What was the totality of the makeup of all of those people there? I think it's a fair question to ask, for sure. I don't have the answer to that. Like I said, I'm trying to get a hold of Brendan, but even people on scene may not totally know. So, Mike Bruno, what does Lynn feel about the Proud Boys attacking police? Well, I didn't see the Proud Boys attack police. I saw them. I don't know. What I saw was they were like in that line, which I see quite a bit. When I've been out on protests where they're kind of all yelling at each other and then, screaming and cursing, and then the police were pushing them back. What does Lynn think about it? I don't know. Lynn needs to start his own channel, obviously. But I do think that whole mess with the Proud Boys and the police is just another instance of things just going completely bonkers right now. Because as we all know, the Proud Boys were, pretty firm supporters of the police. And then all of a sudden, like that, it turned. And now, like somebody said, stuff's getting weird when, people like on the Antifa or Black Lives Matter or, the left side are fighting against police along with the Proud Boys. And I did see somebody, like one of the Washington Antifa chapters tweeted, like, no, that does not mean we're friends. So I don't think you're going to see anybody of these different groups marching together anytime soon. But I do think it is, again, a reflection of this discontent that we're seeing among different groups of people who normally would be adversaries, and maybe they still are adversaries, of course, and not all of their ideology or even most of their ideology aligns. But with their skepticism of authority and the institutions, they're starting to get closer and closer to sounding a lot like each other. But Lynn needs to start his own channel, because I don't like talking for him anyway, but don't you want Lynn to start his own channel? Come on. He'd be way more interesting to look at or listen to than me. Best tweet of the day came from Jans Stoltenberg, panicking about what's happening in the U.S. I'm going to have to look that one up. And Mike, thanks for the super chat, by the way. Appreciate it. Baron of Gray Matter. Left calling for truth and reconciliation councils, and Biden called this insurrection. Be ready for censorship on huge scale. People will be unpersoned. I do believe that probably the call for, ripping false information offline, which, again, everybody, you should know if you are no stranger to the channel, that is a very subjective term in a lot of ways when it comes to how these community guidelines roll out. But I do think you'll see more of that. I absolutely do think you're going to see more of a lockdown on information because of this. Because people are just going to say, it's dangerous and, we can't have this out there. I still think people are going to find each other like water. But, and thanks for the super chat. Thady Magali, thanks for the super chat. This all reminds of what happens in Egypt. National TV covering for the ruling class, two-tiered justice system, censorship, etc. I might as well repatriate if it's all the same. It's been interesting to see how people around the world have been talking about this. Of course, you'll hear some of the people on both the Republican kind of establishment and Democrat establishment sides talking about like the world is just horrified by us. They're terrified and horrified by us. I think there are a lot of parts of the world that are just like, yeah, America, maybe, you weren't, I don't know how, I'm trying not to say this with a curse word, but maybe you didn't have as clean hands as you thought you had. And maybe like the establishment folks, and again, sometimes that term isn't always accurate, but like, the people that are kind of the mainliners, are thinking, yeah, the rest of the world, like, we're the laughing stock now. But there have been a lot of countries that have been, questioning America for a long time, and the way that the institutions treat people here. And, I'll tell you, it was fascinating. I was watching this interview with a professor, I believe I think he was in Iran. And he was talking about the social media and the election and the disinformation flagging and the blocking of accounts and stuff. And he was saying how authoritarian the United States was coming across. And I was blown away listening to a professor in Iran, where, those of us in America are taught like, oh, well, we're the bearers of democracy and freedom and truth. And, listening to a professor in Iran saying like, no. So that really was an eye opener for me. And so I do think like, I don't totally buy those calls of like, we're just the laughing stock of the world. I think people have been, you know, in other countries that, you know, we Americans may have had sleeping giant syndrome for a long time, but I don't think the rest of the world just been like, you know, fawning over America. And now all of a sudden they're just like, oh, you know, wow, they've got issues. Maggie Smith, I'm old protester. I'm sure Proud Boys infiltrated. Are you talking about today, or are you talking about what happened in Salem? But thank you for the super chat. And maybe you're talking about today and they infiltrated it. Brother Brovet, did you watch Weight of Chains documentary yet? It covers, Balkanization of Yugoslavia. I haven't, but I will remember that. I'm going to write that down because I'm always looking for good stuff to watch and read. If you guys ever have any thoughts on that. Okay, just writing it down. You know, old school on a piece of paper with a pen, because that's who I am. Talk about institutions of paper. Fady McGalley says, I moved here because I thought the law and free speech ruled supreme. This is false advertisement. Yep, I agree with you. I think that like somebody, I think, rightly criticized me once when I said, like, you know, that I'm trying to protect the free flow of information. They're like, and Mike, maybe it was you, but you know, there isn't such a thing as a free flow. And you know, you're probably right that there has never been that, and it's idealistic to think that, but certainly we're seeing that now. And like I said, I'd love to get that professor from Iran to come on my channel, because I think his, you know, and he's, you know, no friend of necessarily like American foreign policy, right? But it was interesting to hear him look at what was going on. This was back during the election. Sorry, I'm moving my pen all over the place. That's probably unprofessional. It was just really interesting. Maybe he'll do my channel. But I learned a lot from that guy. Let's see. So some guy in Iran says something and you choose to believe them. Smart girl or guy, however you identify. Well, thanks. I'm a girl. But I believe I said it was interesting. I learned a lot from his opinion. Yeah, I did. I believe that that's what he thinks. So, and I like hearing what other people think. Old school. What does that make me? I don't know. How old are you, Michael? Scroll down here. What was the professor's name? I can't remember. If you guys know, I don't know if you know Richard Medhurst. He's been covering the Assange trial. He interviewed him. So if you go find Richard Medhurst, it was an interview around election time, and he interviewed this guy, and it was really interesting. This ain't short. I know, dude. I gotta go. I don't know. This is not short. That's like the funniest thing that anyone has said yet. I need to just... Oh, and I hear my daughter crying, so I probably do need to go soon. Maybe Lynn will get her, but... Okay. Now, if you come up positive on a COVID test, you are no longer free. You are not going home. Ever. Speculation. Well, like we talked about that bill in one of my other videos in New York, and, you know, that detention bill. I do believe that what's happened over the last year with government kind of shutting down businesses and you know, how people trying, I guess, not necessarily always succeeding at this, but trying to keep people from congregating. And, you know, we did see people protesting that were arrested for like not having their mask or social distancing and stuff. I think that has added to this. I'm not saying this wouldn't have happened without COVID or anything. I'm just saying that I think this last year, specifically with the government shutting down businesses and you know, trying to keep people from you know, with the what do you call them, you know, the quarantine periods, like you can't travel unless you quarantine for a certain amount of time. And I think it's raised the level of agitation that people have with the government, on top of the civil unrest that we saw with Black Lives Matter and whatnot last year too. It's just double. And I just think people are starting to get to a breaking point. Brother Brovet, Thanks for the super chat. The hospitality industry in Michigan is almost completely destroyed. Thousands of multi-generational businesses are dead today. It's really sad. And I do think it has something to do with, like I said, it has something to do with what we're seeing today. Allison, I like your flannel. Very retro 90s. Thank you. It is from a thrift store. So that's where I get all my clothes for the most part. Thanks for the info about the Timcast chat being stopped. I don't know. Did somebody say that? Because I heard that the Timcast chat was stopped. I wasn't watching it, but somebody told me that. And I didn't know. Did he disable it or did YouTube disable it? Does anybody know? I'm curious what happened with that. And Bill, I saw your question. Bill Doris, I've been on for, I don't know, an hour. How long? What time is it? 8. Yeah, almost an hour. So I'm going to... Time to watch. Have you guys seen The Queen's Gambit? Lynn and I just started The Queen's Gambit. It's pretty interesting. YouTube did it. Oh, YouTube disabled it. Wow. Google shut it down on account of not being able to control the calls to action. Oh, crap. Yeah, I figured it would be. Why would you shut down super chats? That guy gets some serious super chats. Like, I think somebody showed me a $500 super chat. Wow. You know what? I was watching Viva and Barnes earlier to see what they were talking about with this, and people were arguing with super chats, but of like $100. Like one person was saying, no, blah, 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 but they were giving $100 super chat, and the other person's like, you're wrong. And they give another. I'm like, can we have that kind of debate on my channel? Like $100 arguments. My sister works in COVID research. They have a film membrane module to install in rooms that detect the spike protein. Combine that with the law in New York. Wow, that's really interesting. I'm going to have to look into that. A film membrane module to install in rooms that detect the spike protein. Wow. Here we go. Yeah, great movie. Well, so The Queen's Gambit is a show. It's one of those, release shows. Queen's Gambit is fiction. Yeah, I know. But we're watching the TV. We're watching it right now. Why would, we like it. We like it. It's dark, but it's interesting. Have you been watching Le Bureau? No, I haven't. If they place you on a respirator, you have allegedly a 10% chance of survival. Well, yeah, actually, I thought it was 80% were dying at the time. I don't know if that's still the case, but earlier when they weren't totally sure how to treat it was pretty high. Once you made it, and was it because and it wasn't a respirator, or is a respirator the same as a ventilator? I think it was the ventilator they were on. I don't think, maybe those are the same thing. I'm not a medical professional, so I'm not going to try to pretend to be one, but I'm going to say ventilators because that's what I know for sure. There was that guy, Dr. Cameron Kyle Seidel, who was one of the early whistleblowers about the ventilators. And he was going on YouTube talking about how they were seeing all these people die. And then eventually I think he was taken out of ICU and put back in the emergency room. I don't know if that was punishment or just like, he just decided he didn't want to work there. And I don't know what was behind that, but I remember hearing about that. But that guy was one of the first to say, and that's why I think it's so important to let people talk about this stuff, because he was seeing it firsthand. And I think there was something to learn from him. But according to like what the known policies were at the time, his criticizing ventilators would have been considered, disinformation about treating COVID. I would love to see you in the Timcast IRL episode. It would be definitely interesting to participate in that for sure. Honestly, what's the point in us staying in a country that is going to oppress us? I'm a single male who can work wherever. Well, we decided to go live in the middle of nowhere so we could kind of do our own thing. So I totally support people moving to wherever they feel like, they want to move. And if it's the middle of nowhere like we did. Oh, and that reminds me, I should have started my stream by talking about this. And if you're still watching, this was actually really interesting. And maybe I'll kind of wrap it up after I say this. We were driving home from the grocery store a couple hours ago. It was dusk, so almost dark. And it was raining. And where we live, people aren't super close. We don't live very close to each other. We're all maybe a football field or more away from each other. We live on 20 acres and we're right next to a state park. And so there's this 9-year-old girl. She was sitting on her wooden fence, kind of in the, like, again, this dark, rainy, not like tons of neighbors around. She's basically all by herself. Her family's not out there. And maybe 3 cars are going to drive by because there's just nobody out here. And she was waving an American flag. 9 years old. And of course, I had to stop and jump out and ask her why. Because I'm nosy. You could take the girl out of the newsroom, but you can't take the newsroom out of the girl. And she said, because I want people to know that I care about America. I was like, wow. Like a 9-year-old girl by herself at night in the rain, sitting on a wooden fence. It was like, I asked her if I could take a picture and she didn't want it. And I said, okay, fine. She's a minor. I should have just taken a picture of the flag just so that I could show people that it was real. I'm not making the story up, but just to have a little kid who knows enough about what's going on right now, like, and of course she knows there are so few people that are going to pass her by, but she was like standing out in the rain. What are we leaving for this kid? And I have a 8-month-old, so I ask myself that a lot. Lynn said today, Lily, it's a good thing that you don't really understand what's going on, what we're saying. Like, she will soon, and I don't think it's going to get any better. So, who's going to talk to their kids about? I'm crying about the 9-year-old. I know. I was like, wow. I mean, so, and I don't even know, she didn't seem to be like partisan necessarily about anything. I think she's just watching, like, I'm sure she was watching what was happening on TV, and she's like, I care about this country, and I'm just going to sit out on my fence. I don't care if anybody sees me. That was really, really interesting to see a 9-year-old say that. Okay. All right, I'm just trying to get to a couple more. Just scrolling down here to get to make sure if I don't miss any super chats. Smush Smash, thanks for the super chat. I really enjoy your show. I appreciate it. Where is that money, that currency from? Does anybody recognize that? Maybe Lynn will recognize that. Ventilators are mechanical life support, a respirator, something you wear to filter the air. Oh yeah, duh. Okay, right. Thank you for the clarification on that. Yes, ventilators is what I was talking about. How long before YouTube totally gets rid of independent journalists? I don't know. But again, go check out BG on the Scene on Twitter. He's the guy I had talking about the Proud Boys. He was there. He's in DC right now. He's tweeting out tons of video. I'm hoping I'll be able to get him to come on the channel. Maybe you guys could send him a message and say, go on Allison's channel. We really want to hear from you. Google took it down. Tim was pretty pissed. Okay, yeah, well, he makes a lot of money on those super chats, so I can imagine. But I'm sure maybe he was also upset about the, not being able to have comments. Jeff Fidley, I would love to see more homesteading. You mean on our channel? Well, guys, breaking news here. What I was going to do for my live stream over the weekend before everything went to hell in a handbasket in Salem, Oregon, and Ted Wheeler decided he was going to condemn Antifa, and Alice in Wonderland came back to life, and the Mad Hatter took over the world, which is basically what's happening. I was going to run a video about giving birth during COVID, show you a snippet of that, and then tease you over to my new channel that I have currently. Actually, I think it might be public, but I'm not going to tell you what it's called because I'm going to wait until we do that live stream and we can talk, because I wanted to answer questions about what it was like giving birth during the beginning of COVID. And I should have done that video like a long time ago. I kind of missed the boat, and buried the lead on that one because probably it was much more of a talking point back in May when we were, a year ago, when people didn't really know what was going on. Were they going to take your kid from you if you had COVID? Could you leave the hospital at all? We had all kinds of restrictions. Lynn couldn't go to any of my appointments. And, but whatever, I've been so busy, I just didn't have time to edit it. But we took all this video of our birth and, the hospital stay and all that stuff. And so I was going to show some of it and then let people ask questions about it, because I have a friend who's actually going to be giving birth soon, and her hospital, is basically saying that if she has, if she's positive for COVID, that, they're going to let the mom decide, I guess, but that there is the option for separation, like taking the kid away. And so that she's kind of concerned about that. Like, what will they really do? And so I wanted to give people a chance to ask questions about it because I went through it at the beginning and I figured maybe there are people that are out there concerned. They like to ask and know what it's about. So anyway, so back to Jeff's point about the homesteading and stuff. I do have another channel I'm about to launch. It's already there. And I've moved a lot of the Airstream content over there. The birth stuff is going to be over there, the long form version of it. So you're going to see a little snippet when I do that live stream. And then we can all move to my other channel for the long form version of it. And then, you know, to take questions from people about what that was like, because it was pretty crazy, I will say. And of course, we had all kinds of crazy things happen with our medical situation, besides the fact that COVID was, you know, throwing everything into a tizzy. David Campbell, thank you so much for the super chat. That's really generous of you. I appreciate it. Thanks for supporting the channel. And our home birth midwife, peace out. Well, actually, we were going to go to a midwife center, but we could not go because my blood pressure spiked the last week of my pregnancy. So I was too high risk for them. So they wouldn't take me. It was pretty depressing, to be honest with you. It was a midwife center across from a hospital. So if anything went wrong, we could go over there, but they were too nervous I was going to have a stroke. And that wasn't going to be enough time to get me over to the hospital. So you know what? That's fine. I don't want to have a stroke. But it was I will say, getting induced with magnesium was a terrible experience. We can talk all about that. It was not fun. Let's see. I was hoping you would do that. Having that stuff mixed in with this channel just isn't right. Yeah, I went back and forth on that and whether it was like a good or a bad idea to mix the two, because I do think there's some intersection, but it just would have screwed up the AI with YouTube. And so, yeah, it belongs to another channel. Is today Bastille Day or fail Steele Day? Let's see. Mr. AI, the MAGA crowd went crazy. The Antifa, BLM, social justice went crazy all summer. Small, large MAGA is MAGA. Have babies, then make them into men. The AI show allegedly Antifa was also missing. Coincidence? I'm just scrolling through a bunch of these at the end. Chopped Seattle salad on the menu. Anyone hungry? Okay, yeah. All right, did I miss anything? I'm scrolling back just to make sure I got all of relevant super chats because everybody was kind enough to give me super chats, and just make sure I got everybody's. But thanks for sticking with me today, guys. Like I said, not trying to pretend that I know everything, but just figured I'd give us a therapy session. Maybe we all just needed to talk. Maybe I just needed to talk. Mike, thanks for the super chat. Hi, Allison. A mutual friend, Matt Jolly, turned me onto your channel. Keep up the great work bringing the truth about the mainstream media. I just talked to Matt. He must have just told you. Matt and I used to work together at Fox in WGXA. It was a Fox affiliate, not an O&O. So we were owned by some like independent, small family-owned company. And he and I used to work. He was the anchor, and I was a reporter there. And that was a crazy time. I was only there 8 months. It was my first TV news station, and it was still tape to tape. You know, where you put the tape in, and then you have to turn the dial, and the tape goes to the other side. It wasn't digital editing on a computer. We had our live truck growing weeds in the parking lot. Our newscast didn't go on until 10 p.m. And so our news director, who was also an anchor, didn't come in until like 3 p.m. because she would, you know, so she wouldn't work overtime. So I already had my whole script and everything written and like my video done basically by the time she got in. So no one was like reading my stories. So I was brand new and I was just putting stuff out there. And this is really funny, okay? I hope we can find the humor in this. I'm sure the baseball team didn't think this was funny at the time, but I'm sorry. So the making music, it was like the baseball team in the area. They had like run out of it. They weren't paying their power bill or something. They didn't have enough money to pay their power bill. And it was like this big story at the time, small town news. And so I thought it was really funny. I wrote the story like I went out to the baseball field and the gates were locked and the grass hadn't been mowed, and the door where you, like, I was banging on the place where you would buy your tickets, and it's like, that's locked up. And so I thought it was really funny to write, it looks like the day the music died, because it's making music. And so here I was, like, thinking I was writing this really funny, intro to my script, and they haven't mowed the lawn, and they haven't done this, they haven't done that. And they wrote me the next day, and they're like, it's the off season. That's why. It's not because we, we're locked up and in destitution and we didn't mow our lawn because we can't afford it. It's just we're not playing baseball right now. And that was like, to me, I was like, oh, crap. That was a really good lesson in bad journalism and not having a copy editor. Like, that's why, I actually enjoy the copy editing process, and part of YouTube that kind of freaks me out is that I put stuff out there without a whole ton of eyes on it. I like people to look over my stuff. I do send it a lot of times to people, just like, hey, we watch this before I make it live, because I do like having other eyes on it. But anyway, love Matt. He's awesome. Thanks for welcome to the channel. Thank you. All right. Great story. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Tom McLean reference. Okay. I enjoy you admit you don't know everything. BBC journalists stuck up know-it-alls. I definitely don't know everything. I do try to just kind of be clear on, like, what I do think I know a lot about and what I'm just kind of, spitballing about. Editors are what make works great. Yeah, and this kind of was interesting because this issue came up right with Glenn Greenwald deciding to quit The Intercept and saying that the editorial process had become, so restrictive on that Hunter Biden story that he had to quit the place that he helped create. And it seemed like what was happening there was that they were like, there was a real problem that he felt journalistically he was not allowed to share information about, and that also they weren't going to let him publish it somewhere else, and that they had violated his contract in that regard. But as far as, like, having editors, generally speaking, I've always appreciated having another pair of eyes on my work, because, like, as I've said many times on the channel, I mean, reporters are people too, right? We have blind spots, and we have places that we don't know what we don't know, and it's nice to have people tell you what's going on. And I always appreciated criticism, and I also appreciated it when viewers would write in and say, hey, you didn't do this or you missed that, and I just do another story. That was typically what I tried to anyway, if my bosses would let me. But at least I would do a new web story. They let me put something online if it wasn't on television again. But I liked it when people would write in, and I encouraged people to do that. In fact, there were a couple of times on social media, for instance, I would post a picture or video with a comment, and people would criticize it, and I'd be like, oh, you know what? I never thought about that. And it would inform my journalism too, just on the social media pages. It would inform what I was doing on television. So I've liked having the community on social media because it gives me other perspectives that I didn't know about. Okay. Y'all, I appreciate, does Allison have a merch store page? I'm working on it. That's, I really want to get, like, because everybody used to make fun of me for being looking like a yoga instructor. So I want to make, like, a t-shirt or a mug that's like, I get my news from a yoga instructor or something, even though I don't teach yoga, but I do yoga. Anyway, but yeah, I'm working on it. Thanks for the calm, intelligent voice of reason. I appreciate that. Thank you. No one to be a check and balance anymore, so why stop? Is that in reference to the government or the media and editing? Your honesty is so refreshing. Let's go. Does that mean go to bed? I think that's what we need to do. I need to go have a glass of wine and have dinner and watch The Queen's Gambit. That's my plan. Official Lynn t-shirts. I know. Basically, Lynn is... I'm just a placeholder. I'm just the placeholder. Lynn's going to be so happy that I'm working these chats like I am, because he set it all up for me so you guys could see it on the screen. Picture just came out that identified Antifa protesters in the Capitol. I'm going to definitely go check that out. At this point, y'all, I got to say, like, you got to be really careful about all of the different images and the videos and the photos and everything that's coming out, because as we've seen many times before, regardless of whatever side you're on, you know, that, you know, you can clip stuff and make it look however you want. I've been shocked at how many like photoshopped images I've seen, you know, go viral, and then people are like, oh, this was photoshopped. And I think that obviously again adds to the distrust of what, you know, what people think about what's out there. So I don't know. You know, I honest to God, I obviously, like I said, to go back to, you know, we know there were Trump, or obviously were Trump supporters there. We can't deny that. I don't know, like when it comes to the other people, who else was there? I guess we'll figure that out in the meantime. But, you know, just be skeptical, and don't just trust me either. You know, find other people to listen to, and hold my ideas in tension with theirs. Let's see. Jeff, it's pretty nice. Thanks for the awesome work, Lynn. Can I be first for the yoga merch? Yes. I will make sure everybody knows, and then just jump on. And Allison, agree, that is the problem. What is a reasonable person supposed to believe anymore? Yeah, it's at, we're at a point where there's just extreme paranoia and skepticism about everything. And I don't blame people. But again, like, I don't think it's fair to just put it on, say, you know, the crazy amount of information that's out there on social media. I think traditional media has played its part as well. As great as Lynn is, I prefer listening to you, Allison. Thanks. Biden will be inaugurated from his bunker. Is that his basement? Isn't that where he's been for a long time? BG on the scene. Excellent tip. Yeah. He's really good. Follow him. BG on the scene on Twitter. How about a slogan contest? Let's do it. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up there. S. Chapman, how about a slogan contest? Let's do it. Send me your ideas for a slogan that should be on my mug. And let's see what happens tomorrow, guys. I'm going to be back on tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to be live. I may be live with Danny if he's willing to do it. The constitutional attorney I was telling you about. I hope he will do that. He may not. But he's got an adventurous, risky side to him, so maybe he'll be willing to go live. I'll be honest with you, though, that man can talk. And you're like, yeah, Allison, well, you've been talking for like an hour and 15 minutes, so that's funny you would say somebody else can talk, but Danny can out-talk me. And I believe Danny's like at least in his 70s. And he's worked on some pretty high-profile cases. He's actually worked on alien stuff. So that would be really interesting to talk to him about. You know, all the alien, like confidential alien, you know, UFO papers that have come out. I've seen him do talks on that. So we could ask him about that too. Did we find out if there were aliens there today? I don't know. But he is going to talk about Assange, and I figure maybe I could just get him live and we can talk about Assange and what happened here and what he sees as kind of like, you know, the energy that's underneath all of this, because I think he's got an interesting perspective too. Okay, let's just make sure I've gotten everybody. I think so. Okay. Don't burrow, Allison Morrow. Is that like the burrows? Do you know the burrows that are the wild burrows? And oh, I gotta click on this. Hang on. That are wild in Nevada, and you drive around and they're just in the middle of the road. I love those. They're awesome. Okay. Hope you and Lynn have a great night. Cheers and peace. Horses. Great live stream. Like you a lot, Allison. Thank you. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Yep. Let's all get some sleep, okay? I'm getting an Amber Alert on my phone right now. I don't know what's going on, but I don't know if you guys can hear that, so it's vibrating. Yeah. Peace, everybody. All right. Yep, let's all go to bed. Or if you're waking up somewhere on the other side of the world, have a great day. Get some coffee. I can't recommend enough Laird's Functional Mushroom Coffee. If you're into coffee, I would say 100% get Laird's Functional Mushroom Coffee, and then get his superfood creamer with like coconut sugar. And I think it also may have mushrooms in the creamer too. It's amazing. It tastes really good. The coffee's really good. And I feel like it's like a healthy superfood boost while you're drinking coffee. So you should definitely get that. And they do not advertise on the channel. So I can just tell you that's what I drink every day in the morning is Laird's Superfood Coffee. You can get it at Costco. Okay. I'm going to go have a glass of, I don't know, probably Cabernet. It's just a Cabernet kind of night. I'm going to see you guys later. I'll see you tomorrow. Get some rest. Be nice to everybody.